Good evening. I'm John Batchelor. This is The John Batchelor Show. I'm very pleased to welcome Mary Kissel, my friend and colleague and co-host of the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal and the host of her own show, Opinion Journal, at WSJ.com. Mary, a very good evening.
Good evening, John. Great
Mary,
to be with you.
later in the hour, we are going to discuss editorials in the Wall Street Journal. You're very familiar with this last week on Thomas Perez and also the comments on Mel Watt, two nominees by the President of the United States in the second term, that both nominees have a good deal to say about housing, about mortgages, and about the Obama administration's understanding of remaking the American economy. Is that a fair
big swaths of the American economy? That's right, John.
At the same time, we're also going to speak within this next hour about Benghazi, which also is a concern. I understand, a little bird whispering to me, a concern of the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal. Yes.
Tiny, John.
The hearings yesterday, 6 hours, Mr. Iss's committee managed to ask an enormous number of questions. They didn't bother to answer, Mary. We just didn't get the answer about who turned off the rescue machine of the United States State Department and military and CIA. Who turned it off?
Maybe they sent it by fax, John.
Yeah, maybe fax, maybe old technology, maybe the snail mail. But in any event, we're going to address those questions because I remind everyone, Benghazi is not about gotcha. Benghazi is about the foreign policy of the United States right now at risk, 2 years into the Arab Spring, now an Arab winter, a collapse across the region. Libya and the actions of the Obama administration in Libya some year and 2 years ago are now part of the story that you will see most recently popping up in Syria. All these dots will connect. Right now, we're going to begin with the very large dot, the blue state of Massachusetts, because Michael Graham of michaelgraham.com, a very vibrant member of the Massachusetts political conversation, is here to help us understand two contradictions. Michael, a very good evening to you. The contradictions are Scott Brown. Isn't he a chump Republican? Didn't he get thrown out of office and replaced by the extremely energetic crusader Elizabeth Warren? Isn't he done? Didn't he leave the state? What's this I'm reading about him polling well for the governor's office? How can this be? Good evening, Michael.
Good evening. Thanks so much for having me. You know, everybody loves Scott Brown until it's time to vote, apparently, is the deal. I don't know how this works. You know, he's a fascinating fellow. He was a state senator that you never would have pulled out of the crowd in 2008. He was just another one of the guys, a longtime legislator from one of the few Republican areas of the state, and he beat Martha Coakley, a weak Democratic candidate in the fluke special election, and he's just taken off. People identify with him, and of course he lost in last year to Liz Warren, a novice candidate herself. But the thinking in Massachusetts is that it was because President Obama was at the top of the ticket, and that's the only reason that he lost. And if it had been an off-year election, say 2014, he might have done much better. Interestingly, here comes 2014. The Republicans will need someone to run for governor, for the open governor's seat, and assuming Scott Brown doesn't move to his, quote, second home, close quote, New Hampshire, and run as a New Hampshire Republican, he might be around to run for governor.
But, Michael, it is Massachusetts, the Pilgrims, independent souls, and, you know, there are a lot of independents in Massachusetts.
No, they're not. That is the biggest myth about Massachusetts of all.
Okay.
And I can prove there are no independents.
Prove it to me, Michael. Prove it to me.
There are 9 members of Congress. They are all Democrats. There are 2 U.S. senators. They are both Democrats. There are 200 members of the legislature. All of the state senators but 4 Democrats.
I'm not saying they vote for Michael. Democrats. I'm not saying they vote for Republicans. I'm just saying that they are a swing vote, but they voted for Scott Brown.
In a special election, Scott Brown managed to win, as the chairman of the Democratic Party in Massachusetts has put it, we will not be caught asleep again. And I'm sorry, it's just a nonsensical notion to say a state where 90% of the elected officials are all the same party, that the voters are independents. The voters are not independents, not at all. The voters are Democrats, but sometimes they can be lured into considering walking across the street. And I think 2014 for a governorship may present that opportunity, because you've had 8 years of a Democratic Governor Deval Patrick, who by even his biggest fans will acknowledge he has somewhat of a tin ear politically. In fact, I would argue he has an aluminum foil head.
A steel ear.
He's
maybe.
very off-putting. He's a hardcore progressive who has no interest in working with the legislators, working on compromise. He kind of has the same philosophy of President Obama, kind of a my way or the highway. And I think that there might be some people interested in saying, we've done this for 8 years. Maybe it's time to give someone else a shot.
Michael, I'm going to be difficult with Mary.
Okay.
This can be the People's Republic of Massachusetts. I understand that. But that does not explain what happened with Scott Brown and Ms. Coakley in 2010. It just doesn't get it done. So, is it Barack Obama? Is that the factor that changed Massachusetts? Because if it is, he's never going to be on the line again. He's never coming back in 2016, in 2018.
Really? I think he's going to be around forever, John.
But not on the top of the ticket. But not on the top of the ticket.
Like Jimmy Carter.
So let me turn to another possibility. Ed Markey has been a member of Congress for 300 years for Massachusetts. In fact, he was there before the Pilgrims, right? We understand that. And he's now going to be the Democratic nominee for the Senate race in an off year. He's faced by a man who is unknown everywhere. His name is Gomez. He's extremely well-spoken. He's exciting. Mary, I believe the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal has already been pleased.
We do not endorse candidates, Sean.
I understand, but you've been pleased by the energy from
I just can't comment on that.
In any event, Mr. Gomez is exciting. So, do we regard Gomez as an impossible dream, like Scott Brown was an impossible dream? Or is he someone who can do very well in an off year?
Two answers. The very quick answer is that Gabriel Gomez, new poll out today, he's down by 17 points already, and the race is coming up in 6 weeks. There's a very tough hill to climb, but you're right. He does have a lot of energy. He's young. He's good-looking. He's a Navy SEAL that resonates with a lot of people. The fact that he's Hispanic has members of the National Party excited, because they believe that they have a problem with Hispanics regarding their candidates. I don't agree that that's the right solution, but that gets them excited. But go back to something. You mentioned, is this all about Barack Obama? Scott Brown was a U.S. Senator because of Barack Obama. He ran at a moment when President Obama was kind of at his height of arrogance and bare-knuckled politics, shoving through Obamacare with and invading the traditional methods of passing legislation. And you had the Tea Party was just coming to a boil. Massachusetts has never been a strong Tea Party state, but I was involved in the movement that we had, and it was truly people who traditionally voted Democrat felt like things in Washington were out of hand. And they voted for Scott Brown in part to send a message. So interestingly, while President Obama helped Scott Brown lose the regular election, he actually launched him. This year, there's none of that sense. In fact, the new poll out today that shows the lead for Markey shows that Massachusetts is overwhelmingly content with President Obama. But I think 70% plus of the people think he's doing a good job. And so the fact is, this is going to be the Mark Sanford of New England, which is Ed Markey's not a strong candidate. He certainly lacks pizzazz. He's rarely in the district. The number one contribution that his supporters made to him is they bought him a GPS system so he could find his own house in Malden, in Malden. And so there's not a lot of excitement there. But just as Mark Sanford, a weak candidate, won a solidly Republican district, chances are Ed Markey is going to win purely from structural partisan politics. Gabriel Gomez is a much more attractive guy to vote for, but Ed Markey will probably win it in the ditches.
Michael Graham, michaelgraham.com. Watching Massachusetts, the blue state of Massachusetts, the governor's office is open in 2014, and the election for Senate, the seat vacated by Mr. Kerry, who's now Secretary of State, is between Ed Markey, longtime member of the congressional delegation, and a young man, Gabriel Gomez, who is running completely on what you'd have to say, energy. Mary Kissel of the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal and the host of WSJ.com's Opinion Journal. I'm John Batchelor.